Welcome to A Shock in the Dark. I'm the narrator on a road trip around the United States, following your stories wherever they may take me. And this week, I've got a special treat. 2 letters from virtually the same place. On this episode, we're going to 2 separate places that are extremely close to each other, Clarkdale and Cornville, which are both just outside Cottonwood, Arizona, where I just checked into what is for sure a haunted but beautiful hotel. As I begin to read this first letter, don't forget, if you've witnessed anything paranormal, anything unexplained, we'd love to hear about it. Send your story to AShockInTheDark@gmail.com, just like this person did. Hello, Shock. My name is, well, you can call me Craig. I live a 10-minute drive from a town called Cottonwood, Arizona. My guess is we've got about 9,000 citizens of this town. That's why I have to use a fake name. Yeah, Craig isn't my real name because basically everybody knows everybody, and I don't need people knowing my sensitive information. I noticed you stay fairly family-friendly, so I'm going to try to tell you this story best I can. I'll be talking in code for some of it because I can't think of another way to do it. So, me and my girlfriend Sarah, we're not exactly young, but we still have a lot of fun together, and we decided to spice things up a bit, as they say. You know, in our love life, in the room in which we sleep, where the bed is, that room. Yeah, dude, I get it. Well, we've been together for over a decade, and we just want to, keep things exciting. So my girlfriend suggested we make our own movie. Nothing we would ever show anybody else. In fact, something we would probably never watch either. So that's what we did. And when we were done making the movie, we had a total of about half an hour of video, and that was it. And we never did watch it. But my girlfriend, who works in the music industry, had to go out of town for 2 weeks to handle some merchandise at some concerts or something. And I got lonely, and yeah, I watched our movie. Man, those things are never as good as you think they are. It's really more about the excitement of making the movie, but I watched about 5 minutes of it, and I was just about to turn it off when I heard something. I heard a weird noise that was embedded in the video. No, it wasn't a noise from either of us. This was a voice. It was a female voice, but it sounded like an elderly woman. It sounded like this woman was right up on the microphone. And here's what it said. This voice of this elderly woman said,
"Well, would you look at that?"
The voice sounded like somebody who's surprised. And I was going to send you the audio so you could hear it for yourself, so you could play it for everybody. And I tried to isolate that voice, but there are other sounds mixed in with the old lady voice. And trust me, I asked my girlfriend, she would kill me in my sleep if I sent you that audio. So anyway, I'm a huge fan of the show, and I thought you would get a kick out of my story, and I thought it might make a good headline for you or something. Like, homemade amateur ghost pee, or haunted S-tape, or something. I'll ask my girl again, but I probably won't be able to get to send you the audio. But I can't help but wonder, was that old lady talking about us? And is she always hanging around?
Well, would you look at that?
Letter number 2. Hello, A Shock in the Dark from Cornville, Arizona. Cornville. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? Well, truthfully, nothing ever happens here, which makes my story even more unusual. The girl I've been in love with for 5 years left me back on July 4th. I guess she wanted to celebrate her independence. I was heartbroken. I wasn't looking to date anybody else. I'm not the kind of guy who wants to rebound. If I'm not going to be serious about somebody, why bother? That's the way I see it anyway. But I did want to find a female friend who would just be friends, so I could still have some feminine energy around me when I'm on the mend. So I ended up putting an ad on this online website under the activity partner section. So naturally, the very first girl I met up with, I fell in love with her immediately. Let's call her Brenda. Brenda was just amazingly beautiful and had this great smile, and she was easy to laugh, but also she was very, very funny. And amazingly, somehow she liked me too. Well, one thing led to another, and after we had hung out a few times, she finally invited me over to her place. While we were in the Uber on the way to her place, she turned to me and said very casually, "Oh, by the way, I should warn you, my house is haunted." I laughed, but she did not. "What do you mean?" "Just what I said. My house is haunted." "Wait, you mean ghosts?" "Yeah, what else is a haunted house? Have you ever heard somebody say, 'Oh, my house is haunted by pigs'?" "No," she laughed. I was not laughing, because either this amazing girl that I fell in love with completely lost her mind, or I'm going to sleep at a haunted house. Both of those things were concerning, to say the least. So I started trying to figure out which one it was. "How do you know your house is haunted?" I asked. "I mean, it just is," she said. "Yeah, okay, but there must be some indication of shadow people walk around at night. You can hear their footsteps on the hardwood floor. You can see them when they walk out of the wall. Sometimes you can hear people whispering. Things disappear from where you left them and show up in weird places. Sometimes," at this point, she noticed that I'm looking a little apprehensive. "Sometimes you probably won't see anything at all, though. That just happens sometimes, okay?" "Okay," I said. I think she was regretting telling me this at this point. "Look," she said, "I live there and I'm fine, so really there's nothing to be afraid of, but you don't have to stay, obviously." "Oh, no, I want to stay. I was just curious, so thanks for telling me." The car pulls up. We hop out, and this house looks like, well, it looks like a haunted house. I don't know anything about types of houses, but I'm pretty sure this house was designed to look Victorian. You know, fancy trim around the porch and these round turret type things like a tower. And a couple of those windows were round. Anyway, if you imagine a haunted house, this is probably exactly what you're thinking of. And I'm just thinking to myself, maybe she thinks it's haunted because it looks haunted? I was hoping anyway. But when we stepped in the doorway, I'm telling you, the vibes were not good. I'm not a hippie or anything, but the vibes were not good. And this is probably a good place to mention, I absolutely never get vibes. The vibes are not good. I'm not a ghost person. I'm not religious. I don't believe the earth is flat. I've actually never given a second thought to anything about that whole world, so walking in that door and then suddenly getting the creeps, that was a whole new thing to me. So we slowly walk up those squeaky wooden stairs and go into her room, and we make out and things, ended up falling asleep. Well, in the middle of the night, I suddenly sat straight up in bed, wide awake, like somebody had thrown a bucket of water on me, and I was sweating and I was panting like I had just finished a marathon for apparently no reason at all. And it took me a second to remember where I was, and my eyes started to adjust to the darkness so I could start scanning the room for anything out of place. And I'm looking around the room left to right, and when I get to the corner of the room to my right, I can barely make out a shape. And I'm racking my brain to just a few hours back, to when I saw everything in the room with lights on. And I cannot, for the life of me, figure out what that thing in the corner was. What was there when the lights were on? I can't remember. It's maybe 5 or 6 feet tall. Maybe like a coat rack or something, a mannequin, a giant pile of dirty clothes. All those things were just wishful thinking. Even though it's very, very hard to see this thing in the dark, I could have sworn that it was moving a little bit. Slowly, maybe a little bit. Maybe it's just swaying a little bit. And then there was no doubt about it. This thing started rising. It was rising up like it had been squatting in the corner, and it just kept on rising and rising, and my eyes were getting more and more adjusted to the room, and I could see clearly that this thing was monstrous in size. It was huge. It had the shape of a person, but it was just so big it had to hunch over where it was standing. Well, without it even taking one step, this thing was looming over me. I could hear the ceiling crack and creak under the strain of this thing's back being against it. I tried to nudge Brenda, which was tough because my instinct was to stay very still, not to move a muscle. But even after I managed to give her a formidable nudge, she just would not wake up. I wanted to hide under the covers, but I also didn't want to take my eyes off this thing, and I'm fairly sure covers would yield very little protection against something that huge. I wasn't sure at first, but it quickly became clear to me that this thing was now bending down, bringing its face closer and closer and closer to mine. It was examining me. Soon, its face was inches from mine, and I would have been willing to say maybe it was a bad dream up to this point. But with that thing's face so close to mine, I could feel its hot, moist breath on my cheeks. And the smell. Oh, God, the smell I will never forget. The best I can describe it is the smell of a dead animal, and body odor and a public toilet all rolled into one. I think that's what actually saved me. That thing's breath shocked me, and it was so despicable that I couldn't help but gag and start dry heaving, which finally shook the bed enough that I heard Brenda start to stir around next to me. In that instant, there was the faintest sound of the rush of air, and the big guy was gone. In a super sleepy, raspy voice, she said, "What are you doing? Come back to bed." "What did I tell you? I told you my house was haunted." But, what did I tell you? I told you my house was haunted. I apologized to her. I told her I hadn't met anyone even close to being as awesome as her in my whole life, but I could not stay. She rolled away from me. I could tell she was angry or disappointed. Maybe she just thought I wasn't manly enough for her or something to spend the night in the haunted house. But I couldn't. Maybe she's right. I couldn't do it. I got all my stuff and hopped in an Uber and I was gone. She never even gave me a chance to explain what happened to me. She just wouldn't return my texts, so eventually I gave up. I'm telling you, me and this girl really could have been something. We could have made it. But it's always something, right? I haven't been out on another date since then. I'm going to give it some time, but that thing I saw, that was no joke. I told a few friends, a couple of people at work, and they treat me like, well, I guess like I treated Brenda when she told me her house was haunted, but it wasn't a dream. It wasn't sleep paralysis. It's not my imagination or a hallucination. That thing was real, and it changed my entire view of the world, just knowing it exists. Thank you very much for taking the time to read my letter. And that concludes 2 letters from near Cottonwood, Nevada, as the Shock in the Dark tour of the United States continues, and your letters dictate our journey. Next week, we head to parts unknown. Maybe it'll be where you are. To support this channel and keep me alive, please at least do one of the following things. You just got to make a comment, or give me a thumbs up, or subscribe, or write your own letter in. Anything. Share it with a friend. Do what you can to support this free content. In the meantime, this is the narrator saying good night, wherever and whoever you are.